Hey California Real Estate, welcome back to NHD Academy. If you watched our episode about California's NHD law, you know that a real estate seller must disclose to a prospective buyer whether the sale property is in any of 6 important natural hazard zones: 2 flood, 2 fire, and 2 seismic or earthquake-related hazards. In a separate episode, we explained one of the state-designated earthquake hazard zones, the Alquist-Priolo earthquake fault zone. In this episode, we'll address the other earthquake hazard category, the Seismic Hazard Mapping Act zone. I'm Patrick McClellan, your host for this episode of NHD Academy, a video series for California real estate agents and consumers. A big earthquake can threaten lives and property by triggering secondary effects on the landscape, including ground failures such as landslides and liquefaction. On a steep hillside, strong shaking can jolt loose weak soil and bedrock that can slide down slope under the pull of gravity. These are earthquake-triggered landslides. Landslides have been triggered in most California earthquakes larger than magnitude 6.5. On the flatlands, prolonged shaking can transform certain water-saturated sandy soils into a heavy liquid that can spread or flow underground beneath building foundations or roads and pipelines. It's this sudden softening, settling, spreading of soggy sandy soil that's called liquefaction. Spectacular examples of liquefaction happened in the magnitude 7.8 San Francisco earthquake back in 1906, and more recently in New Zealand's 6.3 shock in Christchurch in 2011. And for some interesting photos of widespread liquefaction in Christchurch, Google the word liquefaction and click the Images tab on your browser. In California, the state geologist has mapped the metropolitan areas of San Francisco and Los Angeles to identify zones where landslides and liquefaction might be triggered by earthquakes. Under the state's Seismic Hazard Mapping Act, development in these zones is regulated through the local building permit process. A housing project, for example, requires a geologic investigation before construction is permitted. And if the building site is vulnerable to earthquake-triggered ground failure, then the hazard must be avoided or the project must be engineered appropriately to reduce the risk to an acceptable level. Under California's NHD law, the real estate agent or the seller, if acting without an agent, must disclose to the prospective buyer if any portion of the property is within a state-mapped earthquake-triggered landslide or liquefaction zone. The act is not retroactive, so the zones don't protect structures built before the maps were issued, but that's the benefit of the disclosure, to let the buyer know to investigate further if desired. So there you have it, California's Seismic Hazard Mapping Act. It designates zones where strong earthquake shaking could potentially cause landslides or liquefaction. They're zones of required investigation and they're enforced on development, and they must be disclosed to a real estate buyer if they affect the sale property. To learn about the other types of natural hazard disclosures, check out the other episodes in our NHD Academy library. Visit our website, click on the Training Videos tab in the top menu, and watch all the episodes there. And we'll see you next time.